All right, let's dive in. Tycho Brahe, astronomer, a little bit out there, 16th century, a little bit of a wild card.
Let's see.
We got some YouTube, Wikipedia. You send it over.
Yeah.
And
well, he really does. He embodies this sort of wonderful tension between really careful scientific observation and a sense of drama.
yeah, and we got to start with the stories. I mean, come on. The guy loses his nose in a duel.
Over a math problem.
A math problem.
Right.
And then he rocks up to these, I'm assuming, scientific conferences with a gold nose. Or maybe it was brass.
That was such a statement. And you will wonder, what kind of argument could possibly lead to that?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But also remember, this is a time when appearances matter intensely, especially for someone of his standing.
Totally, yeah.
So that gold nose, that's not just a medical necessity. It's like a statement piece. It's like, yeah, I got this over math. What of it?
What are you going to do about it? It's incredible.
Yeah.
But that's not all. The guy's got a pet moose. A pet moose. He threw parties with a moose just strolling around.
Can you imagine? Just having a moose at your 16th century party.
I can't even imagine. It's amazing.
Apparently he bragged to other nobles that his moose was faster than deer.
Oh, I love it. But then, of course, the moose meets a sad end, I guess. Too much beer and some stairs.
Yeah.
Tragic, poor moose.
Yeah.
So never a dull moment. But then, on top of the moose, a psychic dwarf in his entourage. A psychic dwarf.
So Tycho was really into astrology and, believed Jep had prophetic abilities.
Yeah.
And we have to remember, right? Astrology back then was serious business, even for scholars. And he saw these connections, between what was happening in the sky and what was happening in people's lives.
Right, right.
So Jep really sort of got wrapped up in that whole worldview, unfortunately.
It's interesting to think about that, isn't it? I mean, even the most, let's say brilliant minds, still products of their time.
Yeah, yeah.
But okay, let's talk about the science. Because under all of this, he's making incredible breakthroughs. I mean, measuring stars, planets without a telescope, the dedication, the sheer...
It's incredible, right? Just endless patience for measurement. He was obsessed with it.
Yeah, obsessed is a good word.
Yeah.
And accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, shockingly accurate for the time.
Right. And this is data that formed the basis for so much of what we understand about space today.
Absolutely. And this brings us to... I guess one of his most famous discoveries, the supernova, 1572.
Yeah.
Back then, everyone thought the heavens were unchanging, but this new star, it just blew that whole idea apart.
Right. I mean, can you imagine that? You look up and suddenly there's this bright new thing in the sky and everything you thought you knew is wrong.
And he documented it all so carefully, too. This is beyond the moon. This isn't just some, atmospheric thing.
Yeah, a total game changer.
But then on the other hand, he's not buying what Copernicus is selling, right?
Right.
With the whole heliocentric model and the sun at the center.
It's tricky because for all his forward-thinking observations, he's still so rooted in the old physics, the Aristotelian view.
Right.
And it's a big deal back then to even suggest the Earth isn't the center of everything.
So what does he do?
He comes up with his own model, the Tychonic system. It's this kind of compromise, right? The Earth's still in the middle, but the sun goes around the Earth and all the other planets go around the sun.
Okay, wait. So Earth in the middle, sun goes around it, but then all the other planets go around the sun.
Yeah, exactly.
Seems complicated.
Right. It was his way to sort of square what he was seeing with what everyone believed, about science and religion. Couldn't quite let go of that Earth-centered universe, but he couldn't ignore the fact that those other planets were doing something funky around the sun.
So this model's like a snapshot of that time. Brilliant mind, but wrestling with these big changes.
Yeah, totally.
But it also shows us that, science doesn't always move in a straight line.
Oh, absolutely. There are detours, there are dead ends, there are brilliant people holding on to old ideas.
Hold on tight.
Ah.
So we got to talk about Kepler, his assistant, Johannes Kepler, because this is where it gets,
This is the legacy, right? So Kepler, brilliant mathematician, total Copernican, believes in the sun-centered model and, initially thinks Tycho's model is a bit, let's be honest.
a little backwards.
A little backwards, yeah.
Yeah.
But Kepler, he sees the value of Tycho's data. It's
Yes.
so accurate, so meticulous.
Unparalleled.
Exactly. And Tycho, for all their differences, he sees potential in Kepler.
Okay, so they're working together. But does Kepler convince him? Does Tycho finally come around to this heliocentric view?
Unfortunately not. Tycho dies in 1601, and the circumstances, they're a bit unusual to say the least, but before he goes, he entrusts his data, all of it, to Kepler. And that changes everything.
Okay, now that's a cliffhanger. We're going to have to wait for part 2 to hear about those unusual circumstances. I'm still thinking about that gold nose, though. really sets the stage for the kind of character we're dealing with here.
Absolutely. A man who lived life on his own terms, full of contradictions, full of surprises, a true original. Okay, so are you ready for this? Because Tycho's death, it's a bit of a story. It all starts with a banquet. A fancy, formal Prague banquet.
Okay, banquets, lots of food.
Exactly. But there's this etiquette rule. You can't leave the table before the host does. Like, super rude.
Ah, so Tycho's stuck there, probably having a few too many glasses of wine. Knowing him.
Well, exactly. And at some point, nature calls.
Oh, boy.
But Tycho, etiquette king, right, refuses to leave, holds it, and holds it.
Oh, no. This is not going to end well. I can feel it.
Kepler, who's with Tycho in these last days, he says basically Tycho's bladder just couldn't take it anymore. Excruciating pain, couldn't urinate.
So he basically died from holding it in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost funny, but also, wow, that's got to be painful.
Yeah, for centuries, that's what people thought. And it's possible. I mean, a burst bladder could definitely be fatal.
But I also read something about mercury poisoning. Did they exhume his body like 100 years ago to test for that?
They did, yeah. 1901, they dig him up and find high levels of mercury in his hair.
Okay.
Which, of course, gets everyone thinking maybe he was poisoned.
Intentionally poisoned.
Oh, there were theories. Some people pointed the finger at Kepler. Maybe he wanted Tycho's research all to himself. Others thought maybe it was Tycho's cousin, Eric Brahe. Rumors of an affair with the queen. Maybe Eric's acting on behalf of the, jealous king.
Wow, palace intrigue. This is a whole soap opera. So, murder by mercury. Or death by etiquette. What's the verse?
Right, so fast forward to 2010. They exhumed the body again, this time with, modern tech.
Fancy.
And guess what? No foul play. Mercury levels weren't lethal.
It was the bladder. Wow, that's both a relief and kind of hard to believe. Imagine going down in history for that.
Right, but it seems like maybe he ingested some mercury, accidentally from all his alchemy experiments. But the real cause, most likely a medical condition, made worse by, his refusal to just leave the banquet table.
A man who lived by his own rules, brought down by a bodily function and a fancy dinner party rule. You can't make this stuff up. It's almost poetic.
It does add a layer of irony to his whole story. We remember him for the science, for the eccentricities, and for his, unique death. But at the end of the day, it's really his impact on how we see the universe that matters. And for that, we have to thank Kepler.
You're right. It's like the scientific torch being passed. Tycho with his observations, the raw data, and then Kepler with his theories, shaping it all into this new vision. They didn't always agree, but together they achieved something incredible.
They really did. Makes you wonder about all the other hidden collaborations, the partnerships we don't even know about, right? Progress, it's rarely a solo act.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes teamwork.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into that, what about the rest of Tycho's legacy? I mean, the guy's got a lunar crater named after him, and a supernova. Not clever a guy with a fake nose and a pet moose.
Right. But it's more than just celestial objects. Think about Uraniborg, his observatory. It wasn't just about stargazing. It was a whole research center, way ahead of its time.
Oh, yeah. Printing presses, workshops. He even had his own paper mill, like a mini scientific city.
Exactly. And it wasn't just astronomy, alchemy, medicine. He was even mapping Denmark. This guy was a true Renaissance man, driven by pure curiosity.
Yeah, and, with all his quirks, that's what makes him so fascinating. He reminds us that science isn't just about facts and figures. It's about passion, pushing limits, and being open to, the unknown.
And maybe having a pet moose who likes to party. Because, hey, even geniuses need to have some fun.
All right, so we've covered the life, the death, the legacy. But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's play a little what-if game. What if Tycho had lived in a different time?
Ooh, I like this. What are you thinking?
Telescopes. He was a master observer, but he lived just before the invention of the telescope. Imagine what he could have done with that tool.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? Would he have embraced the telescope or stuck to his naked eye observations? Could he have reconciled his model with what he would have seen?
Would he have finally accepted the sun at the center? Would the Kepler partnership have been even more amazing? It's fun to think about the possibilities.
It really is. But even without the telescope, Tycho Brahe, he changed how we see the stars. A man of contradictions, brilliant, a little crazy, and someone whose story, it just keeps us coming back for more.
And he proves that science is a human endeavor, full of triumphs, failures, and maybe a few moose-related incidents along the way.
Well said. So as we finish up this part of our deep dive into Tycho Brahe, let's shift gears a bit and think about how his story might connect to the scientific debates happening today.
It's funny when you think about it, Tycho's resistance to the telescope makes you wonder Are there any, modern-day Tycho Brahes out there? Brilliant minds, but clinging to old theories, even when the new evidence is right there.
Oh, that's a great question. I bet you could find that debate happening in pretty much every scientific field.
Right. Like every time you have a big breakthrough in science, it challenges the way we see things. And so it's going to be natural for some people to push back, right?
Oh, totally. Especially if they built their whole careers on the old way of thinking.
It's like the 5 stages of grief, but for science. Denial, anger, bargaining. I mean, maybe some never even reach acceptance.
Yeah. And the thing is, sometimes those folks holding on to the old ideas, they're not always wrong, or at least not completely.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Like they can bring up good points that force the new theories to be tested even more rigorously.
Exactly. They ask tough questions, point out inconsistencies. It really forces everyone to be more precise, more convincing with their evidence.
So in a way, that resistance, even if it comes from just not wanting to let go of the old ways, it can actually be beneficial.
Absolutely. It's like this refining fire for ideas. And sometimes those clinging to the old ways, well, they might have a point. Look at the history of science. So many times we've thought we had it all figured out, only for a new discovery to come along and turn everything upside down.
It's a good reminder that we don't know everything. Our picture of the universe is always changing, and who knows, maybe there is a Tycho out there today.
Right.
Pushing back, asking the tough questions, and making us really rethink what we think we know.
It's definitely possible. And if history has taught us anything, it's that those challenges, those clashes of ideas, those are what drive science forward. You have to have the debate, the questioning, the testing. That's how we get closer to the truth.
It's funny, isn't it? Tycho, with all his resistance to the Copernican model, his work actually helped prove it. All his detailed observations, the focus on precision, those became the foundation for Kepler's work.
Exactly.
And ultimately for our modern understanding of the solar system.
It really shows you how connected everything is in science. Even when someone's pushing back against an idea, they can still be part of its success. It highlights how important collaboration is. Progress rarely happens in isolation. It's about bringing together different views, different approaches.
It's messy, beautiful, full of unexpected turns and dead ends, but ultimately it leads to breakthroughs.
And it's a process that never really ends.
That's the exciting part. Every new observation, every experiment, every theory, it all adds to our understanding. Who knows what's next? What mind-blowing discoveries are waiting for us?
That's the beauty of science, the never-ending quest to understand the universe. And even someone like Tycho, with all his quirks and contradictions, he played a part in that. He reminds us that progress isn't always neat and tidy.
It's a journey, a collaborative one, sometimes accidental, but it's a journey that's worth taking.
Couldn't said it better myself. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of Tycho Brahe.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember, even a moose can teach us something about the universe, if we're open to it.